Greetings! Let's talk about the Holy Shock Zealot and the leveling process, the starter build guide for this character. Lawbringer and Treachery, and like Death, and maybe a Nagel Ring, and the Angelic set for attack rating, Inferno Strides, and Spirit. So that's kind of what you're looking at. And notice we don't synergize Salvation. Instead, we're opting to get a little bit more physical damage for higher leech, survivability, attack rating, and we put points in Zeal. Now, this character, level 62, is what you're going to target. This can clear early hell fairly well, and kind of dip into like Act 2, Act 3 hell, so quite nicely. Runs a Nightmare Baal fairly efficiently as well, just slowing the monsters incredibly down. The Lawbringer itself brings a lot to the table. It is putting Decrepify on enemies on top of your Holy Freeze from your Mercenary. This slows them down like doubly, almost. And then the Sanctuary R is really nice actually. There are a lot more undead enemies than you think probably, and they will get affected extra damage, knockback. This crowd controls them, keeps them at bay. Yeah, the extra fire and cold damage here is actually quite nice. It makes it more of a multi-element. You won't have as much base physical damage with the Lawbringer. However, this fire and cold, and then of course from the Treachery you get Venom. So gives you more capability to take down lightning immunes. So this was favorable. And then the life leech, of course, always going to be helpful. All in all, a really nice weapon. Oh, and the slain monsters rest in peace is also very important for those summoner packs that are continually just respawning these, undead or imps or whatever. This really takes care and handles that. So all in all, a great weapon for this level. Fairly cheap too, and Limco, so just breaking into hell, you might just be acquiring these level runes, and this is why I think this is a good weapon, fitting. Treachery as well, Shale, Thol, Limb, another Limb rune, so kind of expensive, but your Mercenary is fairly cheap on the other hand. Smoke with some sort of life leech helmet, and then an insight in an exceptional base at the very minimum, so you save money in other places. Something I also really enjoyed with this build was the Inferno Strike boots, getting that mobility in play, whether you're closing the gap to get to a boss quicker or you're trying to escape. The Blaze proc here is now hugely beneficial for any character pretty much. It increases your movement speed now, Blaze does. Helps you get around, and then of course with the Paladin we have the charge ability which helps us get around in the world. And then if you want to, it's kind of extra here, you can create a Harmony bow to help you get around in town. And that's pretty much the only place you'll use that, but but that's an option, right? So Spirit on the shield, you can get higher resistances than I've applied here. Typically though, I find like a +8 or +11, something like this. In a low base that's 4-socket when I first find a 4-socket targe of some type, so that's what I used as my build for my build here. Just getting those plus skills, the faster hit recovery, also very nice. Now there are a few avenues that you could take for early game, and one of the best routes is going to be going into Holy Fire and then respecking later into Holy Shock. There are good reasons for this. One is that Holy Fire's damage earlier on will be higher. It's also more accessible. You can dump more points into it, whereas Holy Shock only unlocks at level 24 and you can only put a few points into it at that time. So its damage will take a while to break even with the damage that you would get from Holy Fire. However, Holy Fire has disadvantages as well. You run into more fire immunes in Nightmare Acts 4 and 5 in particular, and at that time it's just a better spread of damage, in my opinion, to have Holy Shock instead. However, this is a great early game setup, especially if you do not have the gear I'm going to show here as a starter setup. Definitely go Holy Fire. However, if you have all the gear listed, you can opt for a different build, and I'll go over that in a little bit. For this build though, we're going to run the Angelic set. Gives a lot of attack speed, resistances, magic find, mana, plus to life, all good stats, +1 to skills too. Something to note here that I did not know was that you can run not 1 but 2 Angelic Halos and benefit from double the amount of attack rating and magic find. So you're not only getting 250 attack rating, 500. Not only 50% magic find, 100% total. So that's really cool and something we're going to utilize for most of the early game setups. Death Sash gives us Cannot Be Frozen, resistances, life leech, and 30% attack speed here. So one of the cool things with the Angelic setup, you do attack very fast. However, because it is a saber, it's a very short range, so you have to be like right up, you have to be force moving and charging right up to your enemies to make sure that your Zeal actually starts zealing and doesn't do a normal attack instead, which sometimes happens if the targets are farther away. This is a detriment. Ancient's Pledge and a random shield. Tier Mask, very important for mana after each kill, especially since we don't have an Insight rune word just yet. And then any boots with faster run walk and the faster hit recovery charms aren't required here. They're just very nice to have. Now, the break even between lightning and fire is somewhere between level 27 and level 32. And I couldn't get an exact value because the damage values that are listed for Holy Fire on the D2 Planner PTR version right now are currently using the 1.9 times increase with the synergy being at 24% instead of 18%. So it's displaying Holy Fire values that are higher than you would expect. I would expect somewhere in the range of 500, 520 total DPS here if you were to, take the 12% off, that is being added in here extra as compared to the current PTR version. So when you take that value in mind, not the 600, and you compare it to this other build where you're saving for lightning and not really investing that much, you actually can get quite a high amount of DPS. And I'm not going to say it's like great DPS, but the split between physical and cold is really nice here. And instead of running the Angelics, we run the Death's Touch Warsword. This gives us a lot of cold damage, cold DPS, and splits our damage types between physical and cold, which is quite nice. The only thing about this variation is you definitely have to have the extra gears. It's not a first character setup or anything like that. It's probably your second or third character where you have the additional strength charms so that you don't have to invest in that extra strength that's required for the Death's Touch Sword. And keep in mind, this is just for early levels. Once you get to a little bit later level, even if you're running this dedicated like 1 point Holy Freeze setup, you will eventually go into Holy Shock. And notice this build, we've dumped our points into Resist Lightning because while we can't put points into Holy Shock, we can start putting points into its synergy, which will help its damage as you are able to put points into Holy Shock eventually. Like I was saying, somewhere between level 27 and level 32. So cool stuff. If you want to opt for this, feel free to go for it. Yeah. So at this point, you will have graduated to a dedicated Holy Shock build, level 32 at the latest, and have respect into this character. You notice we're able to put points into Holy Shock, and you're going to continue to do that as much as possible while you level. Speaking of leveling, you will be focusing on normal Baal running to get experience, and this character actually handles it really well. Now something you will note is the Angelic Sickle was weaker than the Death's Touch sword. However, when you upgrade it, and you notice the required level is 28, after you upgrade it using the cube recipe, a Rao rune, a Sol rune, and a perfect emerald, and you'll be able to upgrade this weapon. Similarly, take a note for the exceptional armors, Tal Shale and Perfect Diamond. You'll also be able to upgrade your belt, Demon Hide Sash, and get all 4 rows of potion slots with keeping the same early game set. Very powerful. Now, so this setup, slightly different. We are going to slap on a lore helm as well, which will give us plus skills, keeping some of that mana per kill, but also giving us, the lightning resist, energy, damage reduced by, all good stuff. We also can acquire our insight on our Act 2 Prayer Mercenary. And we want a Prayer Merc. That'll make it a little bit easier on our potion spam. We won't have to use potions as much. And it'll help keep your mercenary alive because he probably won't have life leech at this point in time. It will be more important to give him resistance gear so that he can top off his resistances as early as possible, or as good as possible, right? So yeah. We will upgrade to the Inferno Stride boots. So about level 41, you can start thinking about transitioning into Nightmare. And we're going to keep mostly the same gear that I just went over, except your mercenary might have that life leech helmet that I alluded to, and he might also have a smoke armor. You can opt for a defensive Nightmare mercenary as soon as you enter Act 2 to get the Holy Freeze aura if you want, or you can keep your Prayer mercenary. Either one is fine for this point in the process. You will have more points than Holy Shock, and maybe a few more in Resist Lightning just to bump that up, but similar build. I will add that if you have the currency, you can make a Harmony Bow to be able to get around faster in town. That will be very nice. And you're going to add on some more charms, like plus life charms, plus mana charms, maybe some cold resist charms, to boost up your life pool for the most part is the goal here. And yep. That will get you by very nicely in early, like Act 1, Act 2, sometimes Act 3, Nightmare. So something you may be thinking about doing at this point is entering Hell and upgrading your angelic weapon, which is exceptional, to the elite version. Do not do this. Number one, the elite version of this weapon requires a lot of dexterity, a lot of strength, which can be beneficial for your physical damage and attack rating and block. However, at this point in the process, it cuts into the amount of vitality that your build will have, meaning the total amount of life that this character has is going to be significantly lower than if you weren't upgrading this weapon to its elite base. On top of this, to be able to cover the resistances at this point in entering Hell, you have to slot out tons of resistance charms. So probably not your first character, and even still, it's prohibitive because Hell difficulty has a lot of aggressive elites with mods that will just destroy you if you don't have something to crowd control them. This is why I advise not upgrading it, not investing the extra currency that's required, and just going towards building that Lawbringer. The Lawbringer was 10 times better than this Angelic setup, and anyway, I died so many times trying to test the Angelics to get it to work in Hell. So it's a great early game, the Angelics, but the weapon, it isn't that great in Hell. So that's my advice, and yeah. Hope you enjoyed this progression for the Holy Shock character. This is a good starter build for Hell. I'm not going to go past this. However, this is a great early game Hell setup, and I'm very satisfied with the result. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.